morning because I had major wardrobe malfunctions. So Daniel was literally sitting in the car and throwing on different clothes to try and find something he can preach in. And so, but that's not what we're talking about this morning. No. What we're going to be talking about, actually, I feel a bit like, were the worship team, like Rachel and Pamela, sitting outside my bedroom when I was preparing this, because it is really creepy how much it's like such a coincidence that everything they were talking about is what I want to talk about. The songs that were picked, even that story that you told, get this for a bit of coincidence, right? Saul, Mordecai is a descendant of Saul, right? The guy that he didn't kill, that he should have killed, and blah 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 blah. Haman's a descendant of that, and so isn't that weird that she should pick that thing? And anyway, no, Julie, we're not preaching that. Okay, there's a whole load of stuff in there that's so exciting, but there you go. You knew that, didn't you? There we go. All right, I want to give you a little bit of background on our main characters in the story, because what you got today from the play, wasn't that brilliant? Do you enjoy that? It was good, wasn't it? What you got there was a sanitized version, yeah? So what I want to do is just tell you a little bit about the characters. So the first one, King Xerxes. He's a drunk with a nasty temper who values money and his own sexual pleasure. Apparently, if you watch the movie 300, you will get a better idea of what he's like. Just suggest that you don't, because it's okay. But and just the other thing, he is the worst example of a husband. So do not model any of your behavior on him, right? Because he is not a good man. Okay, he is not a good king. We don't look at him and see Jesus, right? We see a horrible man. Because, by the way, I get a bit frustrated with this idea that Esther is a love story, and it isn't. And when I read Esther with my 21st century lens, I'm disturbed and disgusted by the story. Vashti. Now, she wasn't in our play because, again, we were doing the, PG child-friendly version. But Vashti was the queen before Esther. And she gets a really bad reputation because she disobeyed the call of the king. However, when you think about what she was being asked to do, which was basically parade around either naked or semi-naked with a crown on her head in front of all of his drunken mates, now what do you think of her? Because don't tell me that Vashti did not know about her husband's cruel and horrible temper, and don't tell me she didn't know that if she refused him, he would probably kill her. Yeah? So actually, I think she is incredibly brave to stand up in the space and go, I know what you can and you will do to me, but I will not do that. I won't be that object for you. So I think she's incredibly brave to stand up to a bully and a pervert. Obviously, don't think much of the King Xerxes. Have you noticed this? Haman the Agagite. Do you know, that stood out to me. Why does it matter that Haman is an Agagite? But you've just heard it from Pamela. We've got a history here. Yeah. We've got a history of these two people groups fighting with each other. So Haman is an Amalekite, a Canaanite. So we are going right back to Deuteronomy, yeah, in this fight between these two people. But it did strike me as really odd that he was labeled with his people, because Haman is the most self-centered man who cares for no one, not even his own people. The only thing he cares about is himself. Okay, and the only one he fights for is himself. So, but you can see how it's quite easy to label him because of that, let's call it animosity, although it's probably a bit polite, because of the fight between these two people groups, these two cultures. But I also think it's a bit of a warning to us, isn't it? Don't you get into the habit sometimes where you can label one person and dismiss the whole nation or whole people group because of it? Yeah. Haman was a terrible bad man, therefore everyone who is a part of his people group are as well. And yes, the Amalekites did raise up some terrible, wicked leaders, but I don't know if you read your Bible, but Israel did a really good job of raising up terrible, bad kings as well. Yeah? So I think we just need to be careful sometimes of our labels, just like dismissing and our generalities. But it doesn't alter the fact that Haman is so self-obsessed. Mordecai. Mordecai. See, he was our hero, wasn't he? Yeah. And so we all cheer for him, which is great, except that the problem with having heroes, goodies and baddies, heroes and anti-heroes, is that you can really overlook people, the goodies, flaws and character issues. Yeah. And you can kind of like dismiss them because he's the goodie. So he is good. He adopted Esther after her parents died. So he is faithful and loving, and he does give good advice. He is wise. But I have to tell you that as a mum, I think he lacks a whole load of wisdom, right? If I had been the mother of that young girl and I had fostered her and she had lost her parents, I would have moved heaven and hell to protect her and not make it that girl ended up in the hands of a creepy, loud, drunken lout who was going to hurt her. Yeah? So if I'd have been a mum, I would have done the thing of I'd married her off, or I would have hidden her away. I'd have done something. Now, you can argue with me, as certain people have, right, that maybe there weren't those options for Mordecai, yeah? Maybe it wasn't possible to marry her off. It is even possible that Esther was already married to Mordecai, and it made no difference. The king took her anyway. And so, yeah, 21st century lens reading this. However, I also want to say, if you look at the mums in the Bible, do you not see these women who will fight and do anything they can to protect and put their kids forward and get them looked after? New and Old Testament. So if you look at Moses, who was it who hid and protected Moses from the Pharaoh? His mum. The sister watched over, but it was his mum who did it. So I have to tell you, I don't think Mordecai is a very good mum. Right? Um, but I also think there is a whole issue with the way that we read this, because we sort of gloss over what actually happened to Esther. We have this idea that every girl and woman wants to be Queen Esther. How many of you women have been at women's conferences and they preach on Esther? Yeah, we're all, yeah. So we're not preaching on such a time as this, because I don't know about you girls and women here, but I've had enough of it, haven't you? Yeah, and all the women said, amen. So, but we get this like picture, like what you want to be, girls, is Queen Esther. I do not want to be Queen Esther, I don't. Because what was happening to her was horrible. Yeah? I was reading a Jewish writer, what's her name? Maya Saxon Crone, and she said Mordecai saw nothing wrong with selling Esther as a sexual object for the greater good of the Jewish people. What we need are boys and men today to care as much about Esther and Vashti as we do about the anti-Semitism of Haman and the heroics of Mordecai. Yeah? we need to not look at Mordecai and go, oh, isn't it? No, mate. You sold someone who was incredibly vulnerable, had already lost her parents. Now she loses her parents. I'm really cross with him. Yeah. So he and I, in eternity, are going to have a chat. Because, that girl, she lost her parents. She finds a family. She's finally safe again. And she loses it all again. Yeah? This is not a good thing. And Esther, well, as you can probably tell, I think Esther is incredibly brave, because that girl, she faced traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event, and she managed to stay, and she managed to keep her humanity, yeah, and she managed to sort of hold on to herself and find herself again. I think she's incredible. I see her as selfless and faithful and strong. She was treated like an object, and she kept her humanity. And I know women here who are exactly the same. Yeah, they've gone through stuff after stuff after stuff, at the hands of people who should have loved them and should have protected them, and they are incredibly strong. And I take my hats off to you, because you are incredible in the way that you have done this. You've kept your humanity. So last week, Daniel spoke from the book of Daniel. Yay! Daniel, do you remember all the angels and kind of things, or everything supernatural? The main character in Daniel is God. Yeah, he turns up, he walks on fire, he shuts down lions, there's angels, there's dreams, there's kings being deposed and raised up again, but it's all God, isn't it? The book of Esther is the opposite to the book of Daniel. God is not mentioned in this story. Even at the end of the story, it talks about the fact that the they've started a festival called Purim, and it's still celebrated today. And it's a big deal. It's a big party. All the kids dress up as the characters, and all of this sort of stuff. And but even in that space of setting out this festival, the scriptures say that. Sorry, I've lost where I am. The scriptures say that it is Mordecai, it's the Jews who started this festival for themselves. They established this themselves. So this is not a story that has God in the center. This is all about people. I was reading an article by a guy called Dr. Joel Hoffman, and he's an expert on how you find the meaning of words in ancient writings. So you understand that words change meaning over time, and it means different things to the different audiences. So did you know that so if I said to you, the baby needs pink, you'd all think, oh, the baby's a girl, yeah? If you'd done that in 1930s, 1900, 1930s, and said, oh, the baby needs pink, they would have known you meant the baby was a boy. They're quite big differences, aren't they? And so Hoffman, he works to try and tell you not what you hear, and it's great that you hear things from the Bible, but actually what did the audience of the day hear when they heard that word? And so this festival of Purim, he looked at what that word means, and particularly because it says that it came from the word pur, and it means to cast lots, as in drawing lots, and it means like casting dice, yeah, that kind of idea. And it's taken from when Haman, he actually cast lots. He threw the pur to work out what was the lucky day to kill all of the Jews. Yeah, so it's taken from that word. So the festival of Purim, even the name, kind of suggests that Esther is a story of luck, of coincidences, of fortunate events. Hoffman said that this word pur It is not a Hebrew word in this story. But if it was, by curious coincidence, pour in the Hebrew would mean to break and crumble. And then he said that in the festival, oh, what happened there? Do you know how long it took me to make that work? Oh, that's so frustrating. Do you see those cookies? Don't they look yum? That's what you eat at the festival of Purim, right? And they crumble and break. Again, there's this kind of sense, and Hoffman said, even what we eat suggests that thing of that's the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah? All right. So you tell me, in your experience of life, is your life more like the book of Daniel with all the angels and the, stuff going on? Or is your life more like Esther, where you go, that's the way the cookie crumbles? Our car's blown up 5 times, the engine. I don't know how many engines we've had actually. Probably 5, 4, 3 engines, but 5 times, yeah. That's life. Who can relate to me in this space? Is your life Daniel's or is it Esther? That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's life. Yeah? Yeah. So, what can I learn from Esther when my life is that's the way the cookie crumbles? What can I learn? Well, first, Hoffman said, yeah, the word pour does mean lot and throwing dice and taking a chance on luck, but it can also mean to throw one's lot in with someone. So the book of Esther isn't really about fate. It's about people who throw their chance in with God. But there are no angels to confirm they're doing the right thing, and God is not with them in that sense. Yeah? There's no confirmation here that the Lord turns up, other than there are changes and in circumstances, but it's not got the same sort of sense of supernatural or that sense of God being with them in it. And so, with the story of Esther and with that space of going, that's life, that's the way the cookie crumbles, it's about us saying, okay, King Jesus, which was our first song, King Jesus, I'm going to throw my lot in with you. Yeah? Doesn't mean I know how it's going to work out, but it does mean I'm throwing my lot in with you. So, what are the examples of throwing your lot in with God in Esther? Well, actually, there are many times. There's just all these times you think, well, that was lucky. Oh, that was a bit of a coincidence, wasn't it? Or maybe it was a bit unlucky. The story of Haman, when he's like realizing that he's losing everything. The king is angry and he walks out, and the king's always angry. He's always walking out. But anyway, king's angry, he walks out, and Haman throws himself in despair on Queen Esther, right? And just as the moment he did that, in his like desperation and seeking like help, the king walks in, and the king thinks that Haman is molesting and attacking and assaulting the queen. Yeah? It's like, well, that's a bit unlucky for Haman, wasn't it? That's a bit of a coincidence that he turned up just then. Yeah. So that's what Esther is about. There's all these places where the story is going that way, and you think, and then, oh, well, look at that. It's now going in a different direction. Wasn't that coincidence? That thing happened just then to make it change. Wasn't that a coincidence? Doesn't God do that with us? Yeah. Your life is traveling, and then you get these coincidences, things that happen, and suddenly it means that your life is just changing in a different direction. And you can't say that an angel told you, or you had the word of the Lord, or even that you were praying about it. Yeah. But God is the God who comes into that space and gives a thing where it will turn around, and now it's going in the opposite direction. But I think a very specific example of what it's like to throw your lot in with God is seen in Mordecai's story. And I like this one because this is my life, it's probably yours. But do you remember in our story of Mordecai? Oh no, it wasn't in it actually. Mordecai is by the palace. So Esther's in the palace behind doors, and he's outside trying to hear how she's getting on, and he overhears two of the king's officials planning to assassinate the king, and he reports it. And it is investigated, it's found to be true, and the king does what he always does, is to be the most cruel and disgusting way of dealing with it that he can, and he does, all right? And then that's it, and that's the end of the story. And nothing, there's no reward, no acknowledgement for Mordecai in that space. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us what Mordecai thinks about that, but I kind of think he would be inhuman to not think, well, a thanks would have been nice. Yeah? How many times in your life you're just getting on with things, you've done something, there's all of this stuff, and yeah, blah, 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 and there's no reward, no acknowledgement. How many times in your own life have you thought, thanks would have been nice? Yeah? But here's the thing, if you've thrown your lot in with King Jesus, other people may not acknowledge you. They may not say thank you. They may not see you, and they may not remember. But King Jesus does. And by throwing his lot in with Mordecai, in the story, what happens, coincidentally, it was really lucky, right? Haman is getting ready to murder Mordecai horribly. He's getting ready to do that. And just at that time, when he's about to do that and ask the king for permission for that and to execute that, the king just so happens that he can't sleep. And so he reads the story of what Mordecai did. And he's like, oh, did we do anything? Get Haman. Haman, did we do anything to, what? The king asks his servants, did we do anything to reward Mordecai? The servants say no. He says, oh, get Haman. Haman, what should we do to reward someone who does a great job for the king? And because Haman is completely self-centered and doesn't realize there are any other people in the world other than himself, he thinks to himself, oh, king's talking about me. So he comes up with this great plan, only to learn that the reward was not for him, it was for Mordecai. But in that space, now wasn't that lucky? Wasn't that a coincidence? Wasn't that a great thing? Was it? Or was it that the God that Mordecai had thrown his lot in with and said, I'm just going to trust you in this space, knew exactly the right time to bring about his reward? He just waited, and at the right time gave Mordecai something that not only changed Mordecai's life, but it actually changed everyone else's. Yeah. But it's really hard to think like that when all you're in at the time is in this space of, well, a thanks would have been nice. But it's in that space that we learn from Esther and just think, yeah, a thanks would have been nice, but who was I doing this for? Oh, that's right, King Jesus. That's who I'm serving, King Jesus. And I'll trust him for my reward. I think when God is not acting supernaturally, we can miss that he is still the main character in the story. Mordecai, if you look him up, everyone calls him wise because he told Esther to hide that she was a Jew. Is that really a God-given gift of wisdom, or is that not just common sense? If you are a minority group, all right, being taken in, and particularly a minority group of another religion, There's no way a minority group of another religion is going to be queen, are they? So isn't it just common sense to protect her, but also common sense that if he was thinking she might become queen, that she does not reveal she's a Jew? It's common sense, isn't it? Is it? See, it's a problem. It is, isn't it? Do you know what though? This is a definite true story. Uh, This is an absolute true story. The thing that I have found, right, in all my years of working in churches and working with people, is common sense is not common. Like, it isn't, yeah? There are times when people say stuff and I'm like, wow, that's so wise. And the person who said it's like, did you not think of that? Obviously not, because common sense is not common. How many times with the gifts that God has given you do you just dismiss them because it's just common sense? It's not God-given gift of wisdom, it's common sense. God-given gifts that you find in Romans that talk about having sympathy and having administration and all of those gifts that I can't think of now. That hospitality is a huge one, actually. People with the gift of hospitality just honestly just think everyone would just throw open their homes and find ways to include people, yeah? But it's not, is it? These are God-given gifts that we overlook because they're not part of that supernatural. We have this way of missing. Oh, that is so annoying. We have this way of missing what God is doing in our lives because our God is the God who's Emmanuel, God with us in the mundane and the boring and the coincidences and the things we think, well, everyone could do that. When life isn't supernatural, it's too easy to write God out of your story. Here's another difference between the book of Daniel and the book of Esther, right? Daniel is a really good boy. He is a good Jewish boy. Surprisingly, I'm talking about someone else. So he's a really, really good boy, and he goes into a foreign land and he eats kosher food and he tells everyone he's Jewish and he doesn't hide who he is. He's perfect. Mordecai and Esther are not, right? For a start, Jews are not really supposed to marry Gentiles, right? Mordecai told her, unlike Daniel, to hide who she was, to hide what she was doing, to hide her faith and her religion and her culture and her background. And Esther did whatever she was told when she was in the harem and when she was in the king's palace. So you can bet your life she wasn't eating kosher. These are not good Jewish kids, yeah? But that's the point of Esther's story. I think sometimes you can look at other people and you can go, well, they're good. That's why God's working in their life. Yeah, they're good. Me, on the other hand, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I'm not good. Well, you know I'm not. You work with me. So I'm not the good girl. I'm not the good boy. So why would God be in my story? Because I'm not good. He can be in the book of Daniel, and do that in that, because that's Daniel's a good boy. Me, on the other hand, we totally missed the fact, which was Rachel's song. And what was that second one? But it was Rebecca's song. Every time, Rebecca's song, which talks about. No, Rachel Abraham. It's you. No, don't do that. Rachel Abraham's song of like, it's not about me. It's about the God I've thrown my lot in with, yeah, who is working in my life. That's what this is about. And he may choose you who are not good, yeah. I know who you are. He may choose to work out his story and his relationship with you in a supernatural way. He may, I don't know, or he may not. But it doesn't matter how he chooses to do it. God is in your story. Yeah? God is the one who is working in their place. When you throw your lot in with him, he is in your story. And church, each one of you, right? You're in your story now and it is not finished. Yeah? You don't know where this is leading. You start with the beginning of Esther and you're thinking, what else can go wrong? It's just getting worse and worse. You just don't know what God will do. Yeah? God is in your story. Whether you're good or whether you are a sinner and you're doing things wrong. Do we miss God at work in our stories because we failed to acknowledge the coincidences happening in our lives? Do you know, when I was writing this sermon, I remembered I was really sick with hay fever and I went to the chemist to get some help. And it just so happened, right, that the chemist I spoke to, the pharmacist I spoke to, had just read an article and research on how to best help use over-the-counter meds, right, with people who are really sick with hay fever. Wasn't that lucky? Wasn't it just? What coincidence, yeah? Now, but here's the thing. Because that man, and I know this is true because he still works there, right? So because that man didn't then glow like and get like the outside glow and say, I'm an angel and disappear, I never shared it in church about how good God is in my life, right? I didn't tell you the story of how good he was because we miss God working in our lives when it's not supernatural. Bet your life if it disappeared in front of me, poof, I might have come up and said, you never guessed, yeah? It's not about the, poof. It's not about the like out there experiences. It's about God who is working in our lives, yeah? And I'm really great. I am so grateful, and actually I go back to him quite a lot now with anything. I'm like, what you read? Because this is my problem. Right? With that guy at the chemist, because he's such a blessing. God at work. We can miss the testimonies of God at work in our lives. We downplay coincidences. We belittle our gifts because they're not supernatural. And yet God, King Jesus, is willing to work with us and in the lives of flawed people who throw their lot in with him. God, Emmanuel, God with us, is natural. King Jesus is seen in coincidences, and his wisdom is seen in our common sense. If only we had eyes to see the King who is at the very heart of his creation. Can I invite the worship team up, please? Church, I want to invite you to sing a song with us and to use this song as a place to be able to just stop and think about God who is with you in your story. Yeah? A God who is with us, and the God who has not finished with your story yet. Because King Jesus, the one you have thrown your lot in with, is the God who will turn things around. Amen. Will you stand?